too.
We're now joined by Jon Machota, theathletic.com, covers the Cowboys, and I was writing the tease for tonight's our show on the CW channel and mentioned we'll have Jon Machota discussing the Cowboys are a win away from an NFC championship game berth. And it made me start to, wonder what earth is this?
It's an earth where the Cowboys also win a road playoff game for the first time in 30 years and finally beat Tom Brady. So, yes, it does seem like a strange – it's also an earth where the kicker misses 4 extra points in a row and they still win convincingly. So, yeah, it's a strange thing, but that's what – oh, and also maybe even the craziest of them all, it's an earth where 3 of the 4 teams left in the NFC playoffs are also in the NFC East. I mean, things that I just would never have predicted.
No, everything about that is all upside down. Okay, so for Brett Maher, I know Bones Fossil feels pretty good about getting him back into the rhythm, but they did bring in another kicker on their practice squad today, right?
Yeah, Tristan Vizcaino, who he was with them briefly several years ago, but it was like a January signing where they let him go, and I believe it was April. So, I mean, it's not like he was even around for training camp, but obviously they know of him. It kind of makes sense for this game if they were going to, Maher would have to be really bad in practice to where they're just like, we got to have somebody else, for insurance just in case that happens. But he played in San Francisco, so he's actually kicked in San Francisco, which Brett Maher has never kicked at Levi Stadium. So there's that. But the issue that I saw is that, so Vizcaino hasn't played a ton this year. He's kicked 3 extra points and he's made all 3. But last year he kicked 15 extra points and he missed 5 of them. So I don't know how much of an upgrade we're looking at here. I think the only reason you go in that direction is if you really feel like your kicker, who's been solid all year, better than solid, been great all year, is if you really think has the yips and that isn't going to get him back on track anytime soon, then maybe that's the emergency glass that you have to break. But I anticipate Brett Maher being the kicker in San Francisco, but it also, with how he kicked in Tampa, could impact how they, we might see them going for some more 4th down opportunities. We might see them going for 2 after some touchdowns, depending on how the game is going and things like that. But not a problem that you want to have at this point in the season. If this isn't like week 5 or 6, at least you have some time to work it out to be in the divisional round of the playoffs. That's not a great thing. So many good things going for the Cowboys in that game, but that is certainly the biggest negative coming out of that Tampa Bay win.
John, what do you think the bigger matchup issue is for the Cowboys? Their defensive line on San Francisco's offensive line, or the Cowboys' offensive line against the San Francisco defensive line?
Probably the Cowboys' offensive line versus San Francisco's D-line. And I just say that because, I think Tyler Smith will do all right against Nick Bosa, but it's a lot to ask for there. And I mean, this is the Cowboys' offensive line that they've had for most of the season. It doesn't look like they're going to have Jason Peters. And so they should be okay, but that defense, that 49ers defense altogether, I mean, it's going to be daunting. It's going to be a tough matchup there. Whereas on the opposite side, yes, Trent Williams is outstanding and Micah's going to have his hands full there, but they move Micah around enough that I think he'll make enough of an impact. And DeMarcus Lawrence and Osa Digizua and Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler, I think that they'll be able to get home there enough. It's about how are they going to be able to keep Dak clean. And so the positive for the Cowboys, though, is that you look at the way Dak played against Tampa Bay, how mobile he was, how much, he was looking to run in certain situations that he just wasn't doing during the regular season. But now that you're in a situation where it's win or go home, I felt like he was comfortable and maybe a little bit more comfortable than usual using his feet, and I think he'll have to do that in this game.
Yeah, I thought he silenced a lot of critics, don't you?
Yeah, that was stunning to go from that Washington game where obviously the game plan was a lot more vanilla than what we saw against Tampa. But, one of the most impressive things, because you could argue that he went from having his worst game to his best game and just in a huge moment, not only for the Cowboys, but for his own career. But the part that I think I'll always remember for that game is just how it wasn't like he just came out on the first throw and everything was just clicking. Like they started out in those first 2 series and it looked like, oh, this is just a carryover from Washington. And honestly, the play that stood out to me is that one on their 3rd series, they had 2nd and 5, and he throws to Gallup. along the Cowboys sideline, and it wasn't a good throw, but Gallup pulled it in, and it was just like kind of one of those, like, it was their first down. It got the confidence going, and he went to another level after that. He took his game to a level that it's as good as we've ever seen him. And so that's obviously a great thing to have. That's a great confidence builder going into this game. But yeah, I don't think you can say enough good things about him. I thought he was the difference. As great as Micah Parsons was in that game, he was huge too. Don't get me wrong, but Dak Prescott's play as well. I mean, just took everything to another level.
Dak, to me, John, has always had the issue of within the Cowboys fan base, not outside of it, which no matter who the quarterback is, they're going to get criticized because that's what comes with the territory. But within the Cowboys fan base, the reason I believe he hasn't been fully embraced is that they have a warmer memory of Tony Romo than he deserves. And I'm not trying to knock Tony Romo, but it kind of feels to me that every time Dak makes a mistake, they forget the mistakes that Tony Romo made and feel like it would have been better if Tony Romo was the quarterback or all of that, and he hasn't overcome that. But by winning a playoff game on the road, and if he somehow won on the road and the Cowboys are in the NFC Championship, I would think he could finally silence the Romo faithful.
Yeah, I agree, but I will also say if we fast forward in several years down the road, same thing will happen with Dak Prescott, whoever the next quarterback is for the Cowboys. There's this sense in life that I think that we all look back and everything before was always better than it is now. It doesn't have to be just sports. And there will be people that whoever the next quarterback is the Cowboys, they'll be talking about how, man, this guy's never going to be like Dak was or Romo. I mean, they could compare it to that too. Because me in my own life, I look at it as, for me, it's the Michael Jordan thing. Like growing up in Detroit, I always rooted against Michael Jordan. But then as I got older and Jordan was retired and all of a sudden, Kobe and LeBron are coming by and there's people that have the audacity to talk about how they're better than Jordan. And you're just sitting there going like, are you kidding me right now? What are you talking about? Like, and so it's got me in the point where I'm like, kind of, yeah. And then after, because there's going to be plenty of other players down the road and they're going to be talking about how they're better than LeBron or Kobe. And I'll be like, are you serious? Like, how are you saying this already? But it's just always whatever, that thing is. And that's just how it is with the Cowboys, because let's not act like Tony Romo, as good as he was at times, that he didn't have huge mistakes and huge moments. There's a reason that he only had 2 playoff wins, and it wasn't just because he had just these awful teams around him. The team around Tony Romo gets worse as every year goes by. It's just always like he just did it all himself. He just put it together with duct tape, and just somehow Romo put it on his back. Like, and so people just they're going to want to put it in whatever their narrative is, and there will be a time when people look back and they'll appreciate Dak probably more than they do right now.
All right, so the 49ers defense, you mentioned this earlier, they're really good, and they have playmakers across the board, but no defense is perfect, maybe the 85 Bears. Where is their weakness on defense?
I kind of think it's at the defensive backfield. I think that if Dak can get some time, I think that he can, make some throws against this defense. It can cause some problems there. I think that they're good up front and they're going to be sure tackling. I mean, I look at their defense and I think of Fred Warner. I think of Nick Bosa up front. I mean, those are their 2 bell cows of where everything, starts with them. And they're just a really good tackling team and they make plays up front and there's not a lot of mistakes. So I think the corners is where you would have to attack, and that will come with having to get him some time. You're going to have to find some ways to keep that front off of Dak, and if you can, I think that's the area that I can see them having success. Is if he can be in that groove that he was, Monday night, I think that they'll be okay. I think that he'll be able to make enough plays that it'll keep the Cowboys in it down to the very end, and put them in a position where I just really feel like this game has a lot of it will end up having a lot of similarities to the game last year in Dallas. I really feel like it's going to be a close game. It's going to come down to a last possession or two, and I think that this team right now, this Cowboys team, the way they're playing coming off that Tampa Bay game, I think that they're in a good position. That if it does come down to that, with a T.Y. Hilton and Michael Gallup, a better CeeDee Lamb than they had last year, Dalton Schultz playing the way he is, I think that they can make enough plays down the stretch.
John, do you think we'll see more of Israel Mukuamu at cornerback?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe you do something similar with him like you did against like Chris Godwin. You do that with him against like a Brandon Ayuk, because it just seems like it makes the most sense that you're going to have Trayvon Diggs and Debo. You're going to have your Donovan Wilson / Leighton Vander Esch kind of focus on McCaffrey. And then I would say J-Ron Curse will probably spend the most time with Kittle. And so, yeah, I think that fits in there with Mukuamu getting some more time. I'm kind of wondering if our guy Xavier Rhodes, Florida State's finest, we'll get some more. I'm going to be honest with you. This year, I don't think I've been any more surprised at the inactives before a game than I was for this game. Just not Neville Gallimore not being in there, Nashawn Wright not being in there, like not huge surprises, but I just kind of when they read off those names, I was like, oh wow, okay, like you could just they really are going with this more safety heavy package, and they feel very good about all four of their safeties, and so that would make sense. I mean, they need their best tackling guys on the perimeter out there, and I mentioned with Trayvon Diggs going against Debo, that could be an issue there. Trayvon did not tackle well against Tampa Bay, and I think that Kyle Shanahan is going to find every way possible to force him to make tackles in open space. And if you don't make those tackles against a guy like Debo Samuel, you're in trouble.
He's gone. Yeah, you're right. Big, thick, strong, and he's also got great speed. Yeah, this is such an interesting setup, John, because as you mentioned of how they finished the year against Washington, they didn't mail that in. There might have been distractions that week, but they just looked pathetic. And they look to me, and I think a lot of it is Tampa Bay, and I watched a lot of Buccaneer games because they were highlighted a lot, probably not as much as Dallas, but a lot. They just look to be so damn fast and energetic and whatever else. How could that flip a switch in such 1 week, in just 1 week?
Part of me thinks that some of the game plan probably factored in, that there were things that they were going to do against the Bucs that they just weren't going to show against Washington. They didn't want to put that stuff on film. One obvious one being them going with what they call their MAC package, where Connor McGovern comes out and is a fullback, and instead of being their starting left guard, Tyler Smith's at left guard and Jason Peters is at left tackle. They had talked about doing that several weeks before that, to get the running game going, and they weren't going to show that against Washington or Tennessee. So there was little things like that I felt like when things started clicking for them, you just got the sense that they felt like we can score as much as we need to against this Tampa Bay defense. And I don't think any of us thought going into the game that was the case, just because of how bad things looked against Washington and how much they struggled to just do even simple things to be able to get it clicking the way that they did. You felt like they knew that they had more in their bag than they were against Washington, that there were things that they were saving. The reason I thought that was a possibility but was cautious is because I felt the same way going in that 49ers game last year, that, they didn't play well against Arizona. And I was like, maybe they are saving some stuff. And then they played the Niners, and there just wasn't anything that really made me feel that way during the game. But against Tampa Bay, I don't know, like look at the Dak fake handoff to Zeke on the 4th and 1 touchdown. Like, they don't run that stuff against Washington if they get down there. That was going to be something they were going to save for a big moment. And it worked. It was great. I mean, the harshest of Kellen Moore critics has to come out of that game even saying, like, damn, Kellen called a hell of a game.
John, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. A win away, which is interesting because they beat the 49ers in 1992 to get to a Super Bowl, winning three out of 4. And they broke a drought then, and we'll see what happens. This is just the second round, but would be interesting because the 49ers seem to be the favorite right now in the NFC. Jon Machota, theathletic.com, with us on the Cowboys and also the NFL. The AFC